So welcome, Real Estate B School community and Business Freedom Podcast listeners. We're hitting you guys with a special edition here. I am just super humbled and honored to be joined by our guest, Jay Niblick. We were chatting about how I could introduce this guy. He's the co-founder of WiseHire, which we've used in our business for probably 5 or 6 years now, I think. And he's also the author of the Intermetrics DISC profile. So if you don't know what DISC means, you definitely got to hang around for this edition here. And really what we're going to cover today is, to build a real estate business, you need to be focusing a lot of your time as team leader on talent acquisition and studying talent, and how do you draw talent into your world, and how do you make that a part of your ongoing business. And so Jay, why don't you give just a quick intro to our folks that are watching and our listeners in terms of just kind of tee up that conversation around, you're 18 years in doing this. Is that right?
Yeah. Started Intermetrics 18 years ago. Yep. Yeah.
So kind of tee up the conversation about talent. You run a business as well. So you're a business owner, so you can speak firsthand. This is a lot of theory and science, but it's also practical application of how personalities come to bear in a business setting. So why don't you tee up the conversation?
I think, if we're talking about talent acquisition, really, it's usually a word more used in larger corporations or so, but you really just touched on it before we went live. It's the cornerstone of, if your plan is to not just sell real estate by yourself, trading, what I talk about in one of my books, trading your time for their money. That's cool, but that's what you do when you're a solopreneur. You're trading your time for their money. You don't have to, so I'll ask some questions as I tee this up. Would you be okay sharing roughly how many transactions your team did in one of the most recent years?
Yeah, so this year we'll probably do about 3.5 to 3.75 million of GCI. And so we run a pretty high level team. We've separated into, several different sales functions. So we're utilizing, your tool at a very high level to figure out the difference between an inside salesperson versus outside, versus inbound, outbound inside sales versus showing agent, buyer agent, listing agent. So we're really leaning heavily on science to make the best decisions possible with talent.
Well, I think, and I wouldn't argue otherwise, but I think the paraphrasing of what you're really leveraging is team and specialties and talent. So the question I asked was, and the reason I asked it was, what percentage of those did you do?
My last closing was January 2012. So I will not, I've considered not getting my real estate license, not renewing it. So yeah, I'll go on a handful of appointments, of higher end referrals.
But that's it. Any business we see have a life cycle. If you could study business in school or read about it, it's, there's the solopreneur to all the way up to these large corporations, multinational corporations. But these stages that you go through require you to be less of the center of the solar system, to where you're that with others in tow, that you're a lot of people, for us, the first hire is an admin. And then they'll go in that early stage. I'm the rainmaker doing all the selling, and I just need you to take the buyers that I don't want. And some people want to stay there. I'm not judging any one of these areas or levels or stages. But then ultimately, if you want to get to where it's a real business, you have to extract yourself out. And so the topic when we talk about talent acquisition, I think, is how do I get to each of those stages that I want to? Some people want to stay solopreneur. They don't ever want to even be on a team. More power to them. That's perfect. But if you desire to have a large business where you can still be collecting revenue while you're sitting on the beach, or you can go enjoy the family and know that the business is still running and people are being taken care of and actually growing, not just being maintained, then you got to get people around you and extricate yourself out and up on top where you're running the business, which means great people in the right roles doing the right things. That's talent acquisition.
Yeah. So our philosophy and your experience in real estate. So for those of you, maybe it's worth a couple minutes for you to talk about the work you've done in the real estate vertical. So you have this 18-year history with Intermetrics and DISC and creating and the science and all of that. You've kind of packaged it into a piece of software that makes it super easy to do this. And then the path is just that. It's you, then it's an admin, then it's a few buyer agents, then it's, hopefully there's a listing agent amongst the group, and then it's kind of you're delegating and elevating and creating systems. But let's maybe go through a little bit of a background to give the listeners and the viewers here some perspective on why they would listen to you, and what you've seen in that sort of ascension process from producer to team leader.
I always hate this part because I'd rather talk about you or the profiles. So I started the company, Intermetrics, 18 years ago. I was at Johnson & Johnson in a fantastic, big, happy sales income with the family and all the accoutrement. And I decided I was tired of making millions for the company. And I'm a horrible employee anyway. I'm not really great with taking orders. And so I started in metrics. My degrees are in organizational psychology, sales background professionally most of my life. So that worked for me. I wrote a profile called the Attribute Index, and that started out me, solopreneur, selling it around to a whole bunch of people. And eventually, so I've not only gone through this myself with 2 different companies, but seen that evolution in the different corporations that we work with. So Intermetrics at 18 now has 1,500 consultants in, I think, 52 countries, tens of millions of profiles being used. I think we calculated last time that about every 27 or 30 seconds, there's a profile being taken somewhere in the world, 24/7, 365. So governments all the way down to the mom and pops. We saw this thing where these 1,500 consultants, if you look at a pyramid of an organization, they're being used in the very top of the pyramid, because these consultants aren't cheap. These are master consultants that are certified over 6 to 9 months, depending on their level. They're thousands of dollars just to get involved. And so somebody that was wanting to make a hire with this, not just for cold consulting, leadership development, coaching, executive team building, that kind of stuff, they weren't going to use that. Person who wanted to bring on a buyer's agent, in the relevant example here, wasn't going to spend $5,000 with a consultant to come in and help them pick that person. Definitely not for an administrative assistant. So we said, there's this whole segment down here that could use the benefit in hiring, because that wasn't our specialization, it was one of, but they're never going to get to use it. We need to create a software system that takes all of that information and the DISC index and the values index, the other profiles I wrote, and puts it into a single algorithm that says, are they a good match or not? And where do we go? Where's the first place we want to go do that? We looked at real estate because I licensed these profiles to Tony Robbins. He's an old friend. He wrote the foreword for my first book, and he put them up on his website on our agreement. And we were like, where's the majority of those being used? And
I'm laughing because I did it for years until you told me, like, yeah, that's not legal.
Well, it's not like it's illegal. It's just,
right. I don't think he's going to come after me, but I think everyone listening to this will have done that at some point, which is not the right way to do it.
And you know what? I mean, and that's fine. I mean, if I didn't like it, we could take it down. I could press the button or, tell them, hey, stop that right now. It was originally put up for his folks to benefit as they were getting ready for UPW or Date with Destiny or something like that. But we looked at it and said, where are all these being used? And so which vertical do we want to go to with this idea behind making a wise hire where I don't have to pay a $3,000 consultant. I don't even have to understand it. I don't want 22 or 46 pages. I just want someone to say, is a good match here or not? So we wrote the algorithms, we created Wise Hire, and we chose real estate because we wanted, 1, where's it already popular? 2, what's a really broken hiring system? We said, if we want to show proof of concept, let's go where the hiring mentality is really broken. And no offense to anybody, I'm not a realtor, but I co-own a real estate brokerage. So I'm in here too, but 90% failure rate in the first 2 years is what the National Association of Realtors was quoting.
Yeah.
Fail to survive the first 2 years, 90% turnover rate. And not like a Burger King 300% turnover rate, but these are serious sales jobs that should be generating 6 figures. These are professions, 9 out of 10 of which fail.
Yeah.
We were like, that's broken. So let's go there and see if we can't fix that.
And
we landed up in real estate.
I want to talk about, when you're looking to hire just the philosophy, let's talk about the mindset around building a real business. So you're maybe someone listening it's just them or they have an assistant. But the mindset around, when we talked about it before we started, talent, not being transactional, but part of what you do every day. Even if you hired that one buyer agent, you think you have capacity only for one buyer agent, just having it as an ongoing part of your business. Talk about that a little bit when it comes to building a business and having, buyer lead gen, seller lead gen, and talent lead gen.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're talking about a mind shift that has to happen. So we talked about that, going from solopreneur doing everything to eventually being a leader I'm not selling anything. I'm managing the company that does at some 10x what I could do by myself. That same approach has to go when you're looking at hiring. Like you said, hopefully nobody looks at buyers and sellers like transactionally. Oh, I'm going to put an ad up, and once I find my listing client, I'm done. Take it down. Oh, I got a buyer. Cancel it. If I found that buyer, we get this question. If I find my perfect buyer in under the month's advertising that I bought, can I cancel it and get a refund? The ones that struggle with it the most come to us, and their mindset about hiring is transactional. It's not ongoing. And I get it. I only need an administrative assistant. It's my very first hire. Okay. Maybe in that, embryonic stage, you're okay to say, I'm going to come in, find them, and be done. But when you get to the point where you start looking for agents, you're going to have 10, 15, 20 a month. That's about what comes in from a licensed agent standpoint, even in a big market. It's just not a big population. And remember, only about 6% of licensed agents move in a given year, leave one brokerage and go to another. Those that leave because no one told them it was a sales job. They've gone out of the industry. So you have to change to always be hiring, always looking for talent. And the red flags are somebody walks in and says, can I get less than a month? Or in 30 days, I need to find the perfect buyer agent.
And I'll give a real world example. I don't have any regrets per se in terms of how I built my business. And I just view it all as, learning and lessons. I call it, research and development for, everything up to the moment where I'm talking to you now has been research and development for whatever I do in the future.
I like that.
The one thing though, if I had to put my finger on one thing I wish I did differently is this, and this is encouragement for everyone out there, is this one thing we're talking about now. I've treated it very transactionally. And, now we made the full on shift to, we have 3 pillars of lead gen, in our business. And we've got a process for talent, and we're looking for talent all the time. I would sort of, leading up to a year, I would say, all right, I need to hire 3 buyer agents. I'd hire 4, knowing that one would, there'd be some attrition, and then you hire 4, maybe you didn't do it exactly right. There's one of the 4 remaining at the end of the year. Someone on your team leaves to move out of the area. You turn off the funnel because you think that you sort of, you check the box on what you needed to accomplish from a recruiting standpoint. It's the one thing I wish from the get-go, from when I hired my first buyer agent, this is the one area of your business where you can put the pedal down way more heavy than you think, because you need to fail quick in a lot of things. If you've never managed people or built systems or led and inspire, you need to fail through all of that quick because it's pretty painful, so bringing people into your world, it requires you to get into that stuff quicker and learn faster. So I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
Turnover never goes away. You're right. There's good attrition. First off, sometimes turnover is a good thing. The current turnover, the current failure rate or attrition rate is 90%, like we talked about. We might help good teams get to 30, 40. Now, which is still a huge ROI from your business if you can bring one person on and they stay 3 times as long. But no, you're still going to have turnover. You're still going to have people that come in and a year later or 2 years later are gone. So you should always, I understand if somebody says I'm going to meter it a little bit because I'm going to put it out there, find a great person or 2. I'm a fan of 2. If you're going to onboard 1, you might as well onboard 2 for your reasons alone, or not 3 or 4 like you did. and get it done at the same time, because one or two may not be around and the rest of it work out a year later. But now I get where somebody says, okay, now I'm going to shut it off, and I'm not going to have necessarily a really dominant, aggressive recruiting campaign going right now, because I need time to onboard. And at a certain stage in there, you're it, and you don't have the bandwidth to do that and interview and run the business. So it's really tough. But you won't get it right. You'll screw it up. We had to let go of an employee last year. We're a wise hire. We help people make wise hires. We got it wrong. I had to let someone go. We screwed it up. The profiles are not the end all be all panacea of hiring. You can't just, oh, there's one thing, we'll fix everything. No, there's no way of knowing everything about an individual like that. And to your point, there's an old phrase, wisdom comes from good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment.
Yeah.
So, we're all going to screw it up over and over again in many different ways.
Let's talk a little bit about, and I call it looking for patterns versus potential. We talked a little bit before we started about resumes versus a more scientific approach to looking at a person. Let's spend some time talking about that. What is the DISC profile? What data point does it really give us around the DISC, the attributes, the values, all of those things, and how you can, get closer to making a wise hire?
It's a really gross distillation would be like break it up into three big buckets. Personality assessments, and I don't care what they are, whatever you use, no assessment like that should ever be more than a third of the entire hiring decision. And this is based on Bureau of Labor Statistics and a whole bunch of other large organizational and governmental bodies that say this is the recommendation. That still leaves 66%. Another third will be comprised of the hard skills. What's the resume? What's their background? Have they got a license? Have they been trained? Were they trained as a salesperson at another company? All these harder things. And the other third is the interview, the cultural feel, how's the rest of the team feel about them, your gut, the softest of all of these things. And it kind of goes in that hierarchy too. The profiles, that's predictive analytics. It's years and years of scientific research predicting these traits in these roles. And so they still aren't perfect, but they're the most accurate of all of them. The resume is still important. I never want anybody to think, I don't care about the resume. Maybe it's not as relevant or easy in real estate in some roles. An administrative assistant is an example of many other corporate jobs. You can see the history of have they done these jobs before, how much training have they had. That all shows in the resume. Still not as close as like a technician or an engineer or scientist. There, the resume plays a big role. When we hire coders and developers, the resume is huge. We need to know very specific pieces and hard skills that the person has. Hiring salespeople in real estate is tough, but you make a great point. Maybe they don't have real estate experience, which is we talked about this, one of the big trends we're seeing. And I'd like to ask you that question back now that we're live about how many of your last 12 hires weren't licensed. But hiring is tough because they may not have a resume that shows that experience. But your trends, have they got loyalty? Are they job hoppers that are one place every year for the last 5 years, every place for the last 2 years? And then is there a duration that you can see they really stuck with something? Younger people, you have to discredit that a little bit. You dismiss it because the first 5, 6, 7 years, this generation, they do that. They try this very quickly. R&D.
Yeah.
They don't go in and spend the next 10 years and decide I hate this job. But if they're a little bit older generation, I don't like gaps without explanations. I don't like job hoppers because it doesn't show me stick-to-itiveness. I don't care about typos necessarily if it's a sales role.
Yeah.
Salespeople suck at, they have low C's on the disc. They're not really great with detail.
Yeah. And I was going to, I want to get into the two types of personalities, admin versus sales, in a second here. But yeah, to your point, we've hired in the last year about 12 into our team into various sales roles that we have. And some have had licenses. They don't have real estate experience though. And so we're looking. We hired a guy that was selling timeshare. Previously, someone that was an inbound call, inbound sales associate for a insurance call center. Somebody that was doing property management, so a little bit of real estate background. But I mean, we really are digging deep into can this person do the job we need them to do? And it is the craziest thing, and it could be that team leaders, real estate team leaders, decided out of thin air that they were going to be the CEO of this business they were going to build. So, and there's no training for that. I mean, obviously I'm part of a coaching business that gives training. Generally speaking, though, they don't know what to look for in people. They like to see the potential. They're nice people. They're salespeople. They're high eyes. And we just see monumental mistakes. Like you're talking to someone whose job is going to be to generate new business every day, and they've never, ever, ever done it before. And you're like, double thumbs up, this person's going to crush it for me. And it's like, really? How are you sure that they're going to go from being a teacher to, I mean, we actually took a teacher and turned them into a killer inside salesperson for us. It wasn't because we saw we make sure they had the right skills. And our training program is 8 weeks basically of classroom training to get them trained up. And so I just think it's interesting that we, as an industry, we see potential in people where there's no pattern of being able to do the thing we need them to do.
And I think we see personality that implies that they can do it, but we would never tell somebody that if they don't have any kind of background, talking to sales roles, that doesn't seem to make any sense. You know? The biggest trend that we see is listing outside sales jobs. In addition to license, we don't charge anything for additional jobs. It's unlimited jobs in that market. So I think that probably gives them freedom to say, okay, but what I hear back is they're not getting the volume of quality candidates that they want from an ad that says licensed realtor or licensed buyer agent or real estate sales agent. You have to say, well, okay, well, why do 9 out of 10 of them fail? A lot of them fail because they got into it because they were a teacher. They got into it because the industry, I don't think, does a great job of conveying that this is a sales job. Mm-hmm. You can't base it off of sphere of influence and referrals are going to keep me, I put it out to my Facebook and told everybody in my family that I was a realtor and, come on, where are they?
Yeah.
You have to sell. You got to dial 100 FISBOs. You got to spend the first 2 hours every day doing outbound calls. You can't just ping one lead one time and they never called you back and said, oh, well, I guess they got something else. You have to stay on them. It's sales. So they're putting jobs up that say outside sales professional. They have to be able to get a license and willing to get a license, but it's a big trend. And part of the problem is a lot of the agents that come over, the majority of the personalities we've seen in buyer's agents would be more what probably is called a showing agent. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of IS with quite a bit lower D, and the C is actually midline close to the D, or SCs with a moderately good I. And they look more like showing agents. So you put that person into a sales role, they're reactive, great. Like furniture sales, even car sales to a certain extent. You walk up and push their button, they go into sales mode, but otherwise they stand there at the door waiting. They don't prospect, they don't hunt. They're not great at aggressively going after that. So I think that's why a second biggest trend is ISAs. People are bringing on ISAs because that trend of finding those agents that come over to be the buyer agent, they do better servicing and they're in the right role. DI, can you imagine 100 D, 100 I, who's like this insanely hunter-gatherer-ish profile? How do they look when it's like, oh, let's spend the next 3 days looking at houses 6 hours a day? I'd be glad to show you your 35th house, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Yeah. They play it like HGTV. They're like, I'm going to show you 3, pick one.
Yeah. And I joke, HGTV has done, it hasn't done the industry any service whatsoever because it's not anything like that. And that's why we have 5 different sales positions on our team. We have inbound sales associate, outbound sales associate, showing agent, buyer agent, listing agent. And we have high quality showing agents. Showing agent position on our team is a 50 to $60,000 a year position.
And you talk to us, you talk to us, you do this every day. So what's the differences you see between that showing agent, buying agent, listing agent?
Yeah, I mean, and everyone on our team goes through an 8-week training program revolving around new business development. So when you're not showing homes as a showing agent, you are going to be generating new business for the team. And so it's that core sort of skill set of anyone looking to scale a team with, leveraging out the sales function. Just make sure you're bringing people into your world that are willing to generate new business. And I see that on even some of these bigger teams, is that they're getting the overflow of the team leader, and they're not actually they're not adding value to the team leader. And so we just look for that core sort of thing. And then in that 8-week period, people they're going to identify themselves. We've got pretty strict standards around how you graduate from that initial training program, how you graduate to outside sales. It's based on your ability to set appointments that are met by our outside salespeople. Yeah. And so it's 4 times 3 weeks in a row. So 12 METs, and then it's 24 METs in a 4-week period. And then you can graduate to outside sales, and we give all the training. And so we're willing to put the effort into the training so that we don't have to hire people that have their own idea about how real estate is done and all of that. And we have, sales positions that'll pay 35 to 40 if all you're really good at is answering the phone and converting that phone ringing into an appointment. And if you can outbound dial, that's a 6-figure job on our, if you don't want to work evenings and weekends, you could be an outbound prospector on our team and you can make a 6-figure income. Yeah. And if you're willing to work 8 days a week, you can make $250,000 on our team. And it's 75% margin to us. And so we don't have to overpay, on commissions, because we've got we've really got the specialist model dialed in.
Wow.
And we talked, before we started, we talked about, most real estate agents aren't great salespeople, and that's the thing you're not looking, if you want to build a real business, you're not looking for real estate agents. You're looking for salespeople, and 95% of the people that you're looking for didn't sell homes last year. And so it's really committing to that philosophy and that mindset of, I'm looking for talent consistently. And that's my core function, is looking for talent. So any other thoughts on that?
No, I think what you've done is you've realized there's certain populations that are showing up in front of you. You're a much larger team than a lot of the people listening, and you can afford to have all of those positions. I think you can afford to have all those positions because you guys are a great training company. You just described an incredibly in-depth, robust, and high-quality training program. Ultimately, that's where everybody's going to have to get to. But if you start before that, before somebody's a great trainer, when there's none or 2 or 3 or 4 people on the team, if they can't necessarily afford to be that good, they can bring in somebody that's a little bit more evolved, but they still have to mentor them. It drives me crazy, and I'd love your feedback, what you guys would tell somebody from a coaching scenario when they say, I don't have time to invest in this individual. I want to bring somebody on, licensed agent, they hit the ground running, and they don't need any training from me because I don't have time. Which sounds like an old broker model. Like I'm sub-brokering. I'm not going to really put a whole lot into them. I'm just going to say, hey, you can use this license that I use from her, and here's the pay that we'll take out of that. So I love the fact that you talk about that investment in training. But even the ones that are smaller than that, listen to what he's saying, is that he's saying this talent is going to be more ideally suited to do these types of things, which we need him to do. And then maybe this person is a little bit better at that type of thing, which we also need him to do. So look for the talent that's coming in and see if you can use it somehow. It may not be this rigid, here's my box, this is all I want.
Yeah, and there's a lot of real estate agents out there that are great showing agents. So even when I was building my team through that initial year or 2 of admin, then 4 or 5 buyer agents, and kind of slogging through all of that, I always gave my team the opportunity to show homes for me. When I had to do my own production and I had to work with buyers because the margins weren't there, a lot of my team members loved to show homes. It was $20 an hour at the time. It's guaranteed income, and they didn't have to hustle to secure the relationship. So yeah, I mean, there are very few jobs on a real estate team that pay more than $100 an hour, which most people that are building a business want to make a couple $300 an hour, for the amount of effort that they put in, the risk they take. Really good question that we had here. And we are in this world as well. Someone said, we have really high standards and as a result have trouble getting candidates all the way through the sort of hiring funnel. And can we speak to, maybe being able to, maybe lowering the bar a little bit to actually find candidates to hire for an agent position? And I'll give my 2 cents, and then Jay, you can chime in, is that because we have different opportunities, the bar for a showing agent, we have a good example. So we hired two quote unquote agents at the same time. They went through our 8-week training program. One graduated to buyer agent very quickly. He just had back-to-back $1.5 million months, which is 5 or 6 transactions for us. And this is in his 3rd or 4th month of production. And then we had someone who graduated to outside, so still really good, only a showing agent. And so there's a 2x delta in income potential, those 2 positions in our team. And the one that is a showing agent, she's not quite ready to be a full outside agent. We think she's getting close, a year in the showing agent position. So it's just, for us, it's, if you view it as, any team can benefit from a showing agent. If you've got 3 buyer agents and you're a team leader, you could fully leverage a showing agent and have as long as your agents are focused on new business development consistently, you'll be fine. You'll be fine having, that additional leverage, because your agents disappear. Even if you have a structured morning, your agents disappear to show homes. They're gone for 6 hours showing homes. It's like, what are you doing?
2 weeks ago, a guy kind of snapped at me. He said, why the hell would I share commissions with somebody that didn't make the sale? They were just showing the house. And I said, how much do you make in an hour selling? You just mentioned it, and he said today, $300-400, I think he calculated. I said, so how many dollars is that for the 5 hours that you're showing those houses that you're not selling? You don't think that's worth having somebody go show those houses for you? And as an incubator for that individual who you can see, maybe they'll, now that they're getting to know the business because they're really new to it, maybe they'll grow into an agent. How is that not a valuable position to have? To the question that she was asking about having very high bars, I love, but I think the answer is inside anybody that's a realtor already. You've worked with a listing agent or listing client before. Those clients range anywhere from low bars to entrance, in this analogy, where I'll take any price for this house, I just got to get the hell out. I don't care, whatever, to the very high bars. And you've all had one of these, where this is my price, these are all my parameters, I'm low sense of urgency. How have you dealt with those individuals? The parameters were so tight, there was no offer. Nothing in the market came that could fit between. So it's great to have high standards, but when we do this on a mathematical standpoint, when we set the benchmarks, we can't set a benchmark that's so punitive nobody ever makes it through. It's like grading on the curve in school. We can't say, here's the test, and not a single person got an A. So it's like that in so many different examples. My recommendation is go back and look at those parameters. And you have parameters, but they also have to be practical and responsive to the environment and the world around you. So if you're telling me that there's nobody in the marketplace that's making it through your funnel, suspicion is your funnel's probably too harsh.
Yeah. And the thought, I presented on this once, and I remember the slide vividly. It says rock stars not wanted. And everyone, it drives me nuts when you say, yeah, we're looking for, a rock star. And I'm like,
all caps with ampersands.
Yeah. Could you imagine managing 10 rock stars? Like, to me, the thought of that is people that think it doesn't stink, their poop don't stink, and they get to do things the way they want. And like, you actually don't want that. You want very tight systems. You need to lead and manage folks and hold them accountable to a system of doing business. And if you don't have the systems in place and you have these super high standards of, I only want, this and this, your system may be set up a little, we hire good people to run our great systems. And it's not, we don't need great people, and we do have great people, but I'm trying to make the point that, we can hire, our highway for talent is wide because, we have really good systems and we know how we want to do this thing.
You have a variety of positions, and even for those that can't afford that, that's why I tell people when they ask me that, go back to what you would be telling the person who's trying to sell that house. Those parameters in your market aren't working. You're not getting any offers, plenty of showings, but no offers. Well, there's plenty of applicants, but nobody's dropping through the funnel. It's not that there's anything wrong with those parameters per se, but it's in the context. I might be able to get away with that in San Francisco. Those parameters I might have, offers above asking price and bidding wars. And I go to a totally different state or city, those same parameters, that house is never going to get an offer. So nothing wrong with having high standards, but if what you're getting in the marketplace is not fitting inside those, take a careful look at what they are and see if you can consider revising or lowering or changing. Maybe they don't have to have a license. Maybe they can be a fantastic outside salesperson who's making a living selling $3,000 widgets all over the place, and just needs to learn what the new widget called real estate is, and they can kill it. Something like that,
Yeah, and it is daunting. I mean, this is, if you're going to do this at a high level and you have the ability and the bandwidth to, it is similar to, probably not as bad as a buyer internet lead conversion sort of deal. It is looking at a lot of resumes. In 50 resumes, you have you probably have in let's say 100 resumes or 100 applications, you probably have 20 to 30 that are worth a look, and you probably have 10 or 15 that, you may have a phone screen with. It's going to boil down pretty quickly to there's probably 2 to 3 in there that you'll take through a relatively decent process that would be a good fit. It scares me when we're coaching someone and, they've maybe 10 applications and they're like 3 or 4 that are good. I'm like, well, good luck with that, because it's probably not that. So, and that's why having a system like this running all the time and building out this bench, someone made a comment, had a question about, the funnel and wise scores, and the science is one thing, and the system makes it really easy to, kind of look at the different profiles. But maybe you can talk to, for those that are using Wise Hire, how do you coach them to how deep to go into the Wise scores, or who do you want them to spend time, with phone screens and bringing them into the process?
I see the comment that Kevin's made here. So by my saying open up the funnel a little bit or loosen the restrictions and things like that, I would never still consider even good or average or poor. I don't know what the other parameters are that were being mentioned as far as nobody's making it through the funnel. You're getting everybody that's excellent or very good is still a very good person that I think you should consider looking at. If they, from then on out, they're still not making it through, I wouldn't not recommend, well, then you go to average or poor. That's not the parameter that I would suggest adjusting. Is it that you have another assessment or other tests that you're putting them through? Is it that you're not getting the details in the resume because there was a typo and they failed? Is it that they're not doing, so on and so forth? So you just have to look at those and decide which of these do we think we can lighten up a little bit on. And I'm glad to talk to. Send me an email, j@wisehire.com, and we can brainstorm what exact specific things you're looking for and what may or may not be working in your market.
Yeah, a tie into something that we talked about just a minute ago. It's easy to say you want to grow your real estate team and build leverage and systems, and you want to go from 50 sales to 100 to 200. The question was asked about a goal for hiring, and it goes back to making sure you have this hiring process in place, and you're constantly getting the front end of that funnel going. For us, we're always hiring for the year after next year. And so we're hiring for 2020 in 2018. And so we know in 2020, we need 15 agents, or let's say 10 agents selling an average of 22 million, or 15 selling an average of 15 million. And so our goal is 220 million for 2020. And this year is a big push to bring in enough talent to be able to train them up over the next 6 to 12 months so they can hit the ground running in 2020. So really, you have to back into your goals. You know, if you're a solo guy right now with an admin, you just did 40 deals and you want to do 100 next year, you better have a funnel big enough to hire 3 people in the next 3 months that you're going to train up to do 20 sides each next year. You're 40 plus 3 times 20. And so the math isn't complicated. You just need to think ahead a little bit. You know, we look out 10 years, we back it to 3, then we back it to 1. And that cadence works really well for us. Any thoughts on that?
No, I think it's a great idea, because what you're also factoring in, which is so important, is that ramp up time or the build up, onboarding, you know, as some people want to call it, the training. You can't, unless you're that one that says, oh, I'm just going to get the perfect licensed agent that walks right in the door and they're a big hitter and they're going to, it's the, you know, unicorn. They're not likely to come join you anyway because they're already crushing it somewhere else. People you bring on either need your support, they want to join your team. They're not somebody that's just going off to join a straight broker. They want to be on your team because they want help getting better. They want training, they want mentoring, they want support, or they want specialization. They want somebody that has a team that they're doing the harder listings that they're not great at. Someone else is doing the inbound or outbound. They just can come in and do the buyer side or vice versa. They don't want to do all of it. Either way, all of these positions require time to prepare, to build, to grow. You can't just say, hey, I hired you yesterday, and okay, you got to get to know the team and everything. So you got a week, a couple weeks, a month, then you should be really at full speed. You're thinking longer out than a lot of our customers talk about doing, but I think an average should at least be a year. And what am I wanting this person to be doing this time next year? Basement minimum.
Yeah, and it brings up, Michael asked a good question. We are very clear, and we have a 7-year career track for a new hire on our team. So we have if you give us 7 years, we can, and you're the right person, we can get you into multiple 6-figure income. And anywhere in year 4 to 5, you'll be hitting that 200 plus stride. And we're very specific. We're very upfront with everyone we hire on the expectations. It's the 8-week program is for them to earn a spot on the roster. If they don't hit 4 Mets on average for 3 weeks in a row, so 12 Mets over 3 weeks in that 8-week period, we only give them another 4 weeks to hit it. And if they can't hit that, if we can't get them in 12 weeks basically to hit, 12 Mets, then they're not going to be a good fit for sales for our team.
Yeah.
And once they hit the 12, we just had someone hit a 5.73, so it's 15 in 3 weeks. And the beauty of it is that we're paying them, we don't pay them commission while they're getting trained. And so basically we met 15 buyers and sellers based on the appointments that this person set, that we now can earn back our investment. We pay them $2,500 a month to be part of the training program. So we pay them to learn. So basically they earn a spot on the roster, and then they're in to go to outside sales. It's 24 Mets that they get paid on, but they're still in inside sales capacity, because most want to go outside, and some are just going to be great inside salespeople. They don't have to go on appointments, and they can still make 6 figures for us. So that was just to answer your question, but it kind of fit into our conversation.
No, I love it. And I mean, what a great opportunity. How does somebody for whom it's a good fit, how do they not jump all over that? Same question came back up. How do you know when you have too many steps, qualifications in the recruitment process? The answer is simple. Nobody's making it through.
Yeah.
How do I know if the faucet's too tight? Because there's no drip. Not to treat it cavalierly, but I mean, that's the easy answer. If no one gets through your hiring funnel, it's too tight. If everybody gets through your funnel, you said it earlier, so I'm going to talk to 10 agents, and I'll probably 4 or 5 of them are probably good prospects. And I've heard that. I too do the same thing. I'm like, that 50% of the people that show up in the door are okay. You may want to tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a really tricky balance, because Kevin was asking the question. He's a longtime KW agent, and not to disagree with a self-made billionaire, and I will here for a second. I don't think every hire has to be an empire builder. So Gary Keller will tell you that he built Recruit Select and now, career visioning to be, a 12-hour into each person process, because you need to just slow the process down and really be deliberate and look at all these things. And I agree, slowing the process down is good. Being really open about what the process is going to look like up front is really good. They're going to learn a lot about themselves in the process. And when you hire them, they'll know it's for real. I love all of that. And we are looking at ways to make our process quicker, where we don't have, we have like a more than 10-step process. It only requires them coming to the office 4 times, but it's still 4 times. It's a first interview, a second interview, a group interview, and a working interview. We put them on the phone for 3 hours, circle prospecting before we hire them. I want to spend a little bit of time on the profile itself. And if you're listening to this live or recorded on the podcast or in the Real Estate B School community and you're not using WiseHire, I'm pretty sure Jay doesn't need your money, but I'm also pretty sure that you need to have this simple tool. It's super simple pricing. I think it's $199 a month for an MSA. So it's not like, it's your entire metro. And one person, we were talking about it before, on our team, I mean, the incremental gross margin from a right hire is multiple 6 figures. Our lead agents, and that's without any additional overhead for us. One of our lead agents, our lead agents we're 75% gross margin on, and they're doing over $1 million GCI. So it's $750,000 of gross margin. And so do not underestimate your ability to make money and leverage yourself. All comes down to what we're talking about today. So if you feel a little clueless in this area of talent and profiles and how can I leverage, what's a piece of technology I can use to make me learn quicker in this area, this is one thing you gotta go for.
Well, and I'd only put on that, you said it, and I just think it's important enough to reiterate: fail quick, fail frequent. We had an old saying in the military that a perfectly planned, a rapidly planned attack today is better than a perfectly planned attack tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're going to get it wrong. You're not going to get it perfect. We're talking about overall percentages. Think baseball or something. If 90% of the people coming in fail, that's bad. Will we ever get to 100% succeed? No, not possible. Never seen it in any industry, in any business that I've ever worked with. We have single-digit industries we've worked with. Turnover is single-digit, but it's rare and far and few in between. If you can get it down to where you have 30% leave, 20, 40%, you've made a massive difference. So you're going to get it wrong. We can't have a process that's so tight that it's going to absolutely be perfect every time. And I agree with you on the whole Recruit Select. Great to be intentional and focus on it, but I think you can take too long and too much of a good thing at the same time.
Yeah.
And specific profiles you had questions about.
Yeah. So take us through. So someone listening that is looking to hire an admin, kind of walk through the SC and what it feels and looks like, and then talk about hunter versus farmer, maybe IDDI and the difference when you're kind of just starting out with hiring. I think it's just helpful to hear a man with the author of the thing just talk about the personalities. I always think it's cool when you talk about it.
Oh, no, I'm glad to, and jump in. The first thing to remember is all 4 are still important. So Marston's original model from Harvard talks about the ends of these spectrums, and there's a midline in between. And when I was first designing the disc, as you guys know it today, I still somewhat wish I did. There was a circle in the middle. This is sketches on paper I've got around somewhere. Lines that stuck out with a 100 on either end. So 0 in the middle and 100 and 100. That is turned this way because the original interpretation by Drs. Greer and Cleaver in 1970s, 60s, and 70s of Marston's work, they put out a disc index, the first corporate disc index. And they put it like this. They put 4 vertical bars in a 0 to 100 scale. It became so prolific that the entire universe understands it as a 0 to 10 scale or a 0 to 100 scale. So the problem with that is when you look at the bottom, I'll scooch up in case it's me. when you look at somebody that's got a 10 D, the assumption is they almost have no D. But there's just as much force behind that 10 as there is a 90. It's just in the opposite direction. So that's why I wanted to make a line that was like, well, a 90 on the right versus a 90 on the left, instead of a 10 and a 90. This is important because all 4 scores are still important. So we want to know where those 4 are. And when we do our studies for the benchmark, we look at the regression analysis. We're still putting a score that's ideal for D. Even for a transaction coordinator, which is the furthest on that SC scale, like an admin that's more like an accountant, the pure, this is all I do is paperwork and transactions. That D still has an ideal place that it should be. Administrative assistant, you don't want a D that's below 25. It's too far in that opposite direction because they still need to be able to make decisions. So normally on the administrative and operations side, SC are dominant. They tend to be in that 70 range for both of them. Too much of them is bad. A 99S has such a drive for stability and certainty that it's going to drive everybody crazy to try to onboard them in a rapid paced environment. Joining a company that's very slow paced and methodical, and they've been in business for 150 years and everything does this, that's cool, but it's too much for them. So you're looking more in that 70 range. A 99 or 100C is pedantic in this role. You're never going to get that perfection. You're never going to get perfect paperwork. You're going to make mistakes. And your office is going to try to get it perfect every time. But that can happen at that 75 range. I normally drops down closer to the 50 because they still have to be sociable, maybe 60. I'd have to look at the benchmark. And then the D's down in that 25 range. So each of those is really important. And what people often forget about is the values are absolutely just as important. Give me 2 salespeople with identical discs, and they're great discs for whatever that sales role is, completely antithetical on the values. One's a first place economic, 99. The other is a 7th place economic, first place altruistic. One's going to be able to sell, hunt, sell. The other is not. Even though their behaviors are the same, their motivations aren't. And so they're not going to be inspired by it, engaged, attracted to it, enjoy it, or like it at all. And even if I can do it, if I don't enjoy it, I ain't going to stay long.
Yeah, that's awesome. One comment I want to make is, and it's pretty random, but I want to make it because there's someone that's listening that has a daughter like mine. And so I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I was doing training recently on DISC. And what hit me during the training is that, man, I have completely missed the ball because as a salesperson, you want to be able to sell to Jay differently than Tony Robbins, than whoever you're selling to or pitching to. You want to speak their language and have some awareness how your profile, your psychology links with theirs and how you can motivate and inspire them to take action to do the thing you want them to do. So as a parent, I'm like, so I was going through this training, and my daughter is a off the charts C, and she's only 7. So you're wondering, like, how'd you disc her? Like, I just figured her out. Yeah. So I know her personality. And my son, we just moved into a new neighborhood. So here's the example. My son, we moved into a new neighborhood, 80 homes. He went door to door introducing himself. And he didn't even ask us that he was, if he could do it. He just went ahead and did it. And so this was concerning to me. It's like super high I. And then my daughter, she's like best friends with our next door neighbor. And she can't go over there without having him take her so she's just shy and sort of, anxious. And when she's shopping in a store, Anders is like, he'll pick out something. It takes him a second. My daughter, it takes her forever. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you know the DISC, slow down a little bit to see how you can apply it in your personal life. And because I have a C daughter, an I son, an S wife, and I'm a hard charging D. So it's been the biggest life changer. Applying your DISC to my family has made the consumers, the services I provide as a father and as a husband, it's been life changing for me. So there's no point at all to say any of that, except that this stuff is real, and you have to figure out. We haven't covered the implications of knowing your own personality and how you interact with your admin, or how you interact with another hard charging D. A D talking to a D, there's always going to be this conflict. And so we haven't really covered it. I just want to throw it out there.
We can make it another topic. I'll host the next one, and we'll talk exclusively about using the profiles in communications and hiring, selling, buyers' motives, buyer styles. How do I communicate with a high DI, a sales prospect versus an SC, or how could I even identify them?
Yeah, that'll be a phenomenal topic, because I think that there's monumental power in understanding your personality and how you interact with people you're selling to or your team members. So I think that's really, really cool. We've got just a few minutes left. I want to ask you a couple parting questions, but any other final thoughts?
There is one question in here that I think is really cool, and it's about using your own disc to this topic when you're hiring. It's a tricky question, and you shouldn't use it that much. You hire for the position. You try to remove, it's like sales you were just talking about. That's why I said it's germane. You hire for who's best for the position. And you don't necessarily want to do a whole lot, much of a percentage point at all, of hiring based on how well you're going to like them or get along with them. Otherwise, you'll never hire. Because if I hire, I'm a super DI, 100 both. If I hire an administrative assistant, I'm not going to like any of them in the interview, because they're all going to ask too many questions. They're all going to be too polite and quiet. Hire for the position, then use the profiles to figure out how to work together after the fact.
Yeah. And the one thing I'll say on that is that a high DI, really optimistic, really impatient. So high I's tend to be just optimistic. And when we set goals, it's like, yeah, we'll do $1 billion worth of real estate next year. It's like, no, we're not going to do $1 billion. And they're impatient. Like, why didn't we do $1 billion last year? Well, we only did 100 million last year. Like, there's, just slow your roll. So that's the only thing that I would say is, like, know how you can mess up the process with your personality and the way you naturally show up. Because you're going to shortcut the process. You're going to want to hire the first person. If you're high I, you're going to talk about yourself the whole time. You're going to want to be liked. You're going to oversell them. You're not going to give them any chance to, prove to you that they're a worthy fit. So I think it's super interesting. I've got just a couple quick questions for you. What's the best advice you've ever been given about business?
You get what you accept.
Tell me a little bit more.
I put it in my first book. It was a sales manager at Johnson & Johnson, and he said, I was young, 20, not too far out of the military. And he said, you get what you accept. And so there's a thing in psychology called internal or external locus of control. And so if I have an internal locus of control, I'm responsible for the way my life's going to be. An external is somebody who says, well, because the market tipped, because they wouldn't buy, because it's external to me, the results I have. So in my businesses and others that I've coached, having that attitude of I get what I accept has made more of a difference, because I'll find a way around it. And whether you're even a low D or a low I, regardless of your profile, if you have an attitude of, if you're not happy with something, you're the one to blame. Because you can't control the way the world acts or what the world does, but you can control what you do to it or how you respond to it, all these old other sayings like that. But there's nothing that I should accept that says it's the way it has to be.
Awesome. What's one book you'd recommend on building or scaling a business?
Well, there's a whole bunch of them on scaling teams. Read Pat Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's been out quite a few years and has proven itself time and time again to be a really, really great read. It's a fantastic book. And if you're going to be dealing with people, even before you're having to deal with them, I strongly recommend it.
Yeah. And going back to it. That's one thing that we've gone back as a leadership team. We've done it 4 or 5 times now when we've taken the team through it. And we've been honest with ourselves as a leadership team that there are times where we're not vulnerable and, all that stuff. So that's really, really good. Let me ask you one more question. When I say business is 80% psychology, what does that mean to you?
It's your attitude and approach and how you see it in perspective, all those things, not the actual product or service in this case.
Yeah. Awesome. Jay, man, every time I get the chance to talk to you, I'm more inspired, and just the fact that you've done you've used what you provide to the world now to grow your own businesses, multiple businesses, I think is amazing. So like I said, if you guys haven't checked out wisehire.com, it's one of just like those no-brainers in your business. It's going to force you to become a better business owner, and just looking at the science. It's a full, complete system. So we didn't cover it. Just go to the site and you'll figure it out. But it really is a full business I call it talent acquisition system. Where they really do the heavy lifting for you, and turn it on, and don't think it's an expense that you can ever get rid of. It's the best investment you'll make in your business.
But I would, again, point back to some of the people that we've invited. We're going to help with the talent, the actual practice management, running of it. There's so much to be learned that everybody that's not listening to you needs to come over and see what they can get from you, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
You've done it too. You've grown there. You've been there. You've got the business to a point. The best thing I've heard you say is it's these people talk to themselves as team leaders. You just said business owner. And I think if you were to encapsulate the whole mentality of everything we're trying to say, you don't necessarily just want to stay as a team leader. You want to be a business owner. That means that's a whole different shift. That's a whole different approach to how you have to go at this.
Awesome. Well, Jay, I appreciate you. I know our listeners and viewers appreciate you. Again, check out wisehire.com and go out and build a business that serves your life. That's the best advice I can give you. Thanks again, Jay.
And others. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.